Hi, Stephen from OWNorDisown. Well, Acer were kind enough to send me the Acer Nitro 5. Now this has the RTX 3070 max 85 watt and the Ryzen 7 5800H with 16 gigabytes of RAM. So I'm going to do a quick first look review, and I'll do a follow-up video comparing it, how it gets on against, say, a more powerful 3070 like an Legion 7, a 140 watt one. So we'll see what the difference is there. So what you get in the box, of course, you get a laptop, you get a 180 watt power brick. It's actually nice and small and thin, which is nice. So that's one benefit of going for a lower power GPU. You get the quick start guide, various Planet 9 stickers, so obviously don't like those, and some FCC warning or whatever there. So on Amazon, the RTX 3070 model with the 5800H is $1,699, and if you want the 3080 model, that's $2,100, and I'll have links in the description below. As for the pricing there, I did think that $1,699 was a little bit expensive, you know, considering it is an all plastic build. You know, I bought my Legion 7 with a 140 watt 3070 for the same price, and of course that's got G-Sync and aluminium body, full RGB everywhere. So it's a little bit high. Now the 3080, of course, at $2,100. I suspect that's going to be a max 100 watt 3080 like in the Helios 300. And I did show in that video, if you haven't seen that, make sure you click up here, that it wasn't really worth it compared to the 3060 model. So, you know, we'll cut to the benchmark shortly on this. So I do think perhaps the 3060 model might be the best. Now it is available in either a full HD or a QHD display, 144 Hz or 165 Hz respectively, with a thin 7mm bezel. Now it does have a 3 millisecond response time with overdrive. Styling wise, it's exactly the same as the previous generation. Now it's all plastic, black, but you know, I thought that was an improvement from the previous years, so I still quite like that. Now the screen is 165 Hz, 3 millisecond with overdrive, QHD, so 2560 by 1440. So it's like good panel. It's actually 93% of sRGB, so that was pretty good too. The contrast was about 930 to 1, and the brightness 305 nits. So it was actually not a bad panel, and there was no backlight bleed at all, and the ghosting was pretty decent too, so minimal ghosting there. So it's a decent panel, which is good for this price point. Now one thing that did strike me was the keyboard was a bit like the Helios 300 in a way, you know. It's still got a plastic deck, so it's like a Helios 300 but in a plastic frame. So you do have the white paint around the sides of the keys, and you do have, you know, 4-zone RGB. I thought that was very good. Or you could have, of course, one set color as well, all configured via the software. And the WASD keys are highlighted white. Now the trackpad is Elan. So it's, you know, you may think that's not that great, but they've come a long way and it works very well. It is made of plastic, of course. Now I did find that the speakers were average, 70 decibels at best. Sometimes I'd have difficulty hearing what was if I was playing some video on YouTube, so that was a shame. So it's slightly under average, I would say, for the speakers. So let's take a look inside. The previous generation here and the new model here. Now the first thing we'll notice is we do have dual channel RAM. Fast RAM as well, it's single rank by 8, so they're not skimping there. That's very nice. You have a 57 watt hour battery, which lasted me 4 hours at 25% brightness power saver, so it wasn't so good compared to, you know, the 4600H. Even with the 55 watt hour battery, that lasted me about 10 hours. On both, we do get a 2.5 inch bay, and they're kind enough to supply the SATA cable as well as the screws to put it in. The SSD, 1 terabyte, Samsung, and it's actually not too bad. It's got 2,300 megabytes per second read and only 524 megabytes per second write. Now we do have a MediaTek Wi-Fi card, and actually that worked very well. 50 megabytes per second download on my games. So here we have the 5800H, and here the RTX 3070. The heat pipes are a little bit thicker than the previous model, which only of course had the 1650 here, but I would rather have seen a bit more robust cooling, and hence the CPU does run a bit hot, I must admit. So we have a 720p webcam, which is at least located at the top, It does a job, for your Zoom call. Won't use it for professional applications. It's rather grainy. This is what it's like when you're typing. And of course, when you turn on the max fan, which you're unlikely to do while using the camera, but it does pick up that quite well. There you go. So looking at the ports on the left hand side, it's exactly the same chassis with the new one here and the previous generation underneath. We have the Kensington lock, air vent, Ethernet jack, and 2 USB type A ports, and finally a combo headphone mic jack. Around the back we have the power port and 2 air vents. One thing to bear in mind is, initially I thought I had a dud device, because you push the power cable in and you think it's in, but the battery was not charging at all. I guess you got to push it in a little bit further there to make it connect and work, so just bear that in mind. Finally, on the right hand side we have a USB type C port, which on the internal model will be a Thunderbolt, and here we have a USB type A port, which can be used to power things like your cell phone if the laptop is powered off, an HDMI 2.1 and an air vent. So you can activate the Nitrosense software by pressing the N key on the number pad. Once you're in there, you've got good control over fan speeds. You can have an auto, which then you can use cooler boost. You can switch it to max fan, which jacks the fans up to about 4,800 on the CPU and 5,600 on the GPU. Or you can do a custom fan profile should you wish, by altering the fan speed manually between the CPU and the GPU. Also, you have various power plans. You have power saver, balanced, and high performance. And also on the keyboard, you can either have 4-zone RGB, which is very nice. You can actually change, of course, each zone independently. Or, should you wish, you can actually have, various preset patterns like breathing, wave, that type of thing. And also, you have options on the audio control, various presets there, as well as turning off and on the Windows menu key, and also changing the backlight, which automatically times off after 30 seconds. Now, to test the thermals, I wanted to use Far Cry New Dawn, because that does really push a laptop very hard and gets it hot. So I tested actually 2 power modes, the balanced and high performance. At the top is balanced with auto fan. In the center is balanced with auto fan plus the cooler boost, and at the bottom is balanced with the max fan. Now, interestingly, as the fan speed increases, the 5800H pulls slightly more power, and its clock rate increases to the tune of an extra 300 MHz between the auto fan and the max fan. Now, to the right, I show the fan noise in decibels. You notice that auto fan at 49 decibels is actually pretty fine. That was bearable. And when you did switch to the cooler boost, that did add an extra 2 to 3 decibels, and that was certainly noticeable. But it actually had little effect on the CPU temperature, and just a slight reduction in the GPU temperature. So I would say actually it's not really worth using that cooler boost option. Now, max fan is plenty loud at 57 decibels, but it does bring the temperatures down very good. You may find a good balance using that custom fan profile. Now, high performance mode doesn't appear to change much of anything. Clock rates, the power levels, and the thermals seem to be about the same. So let's see how it affects frame rates in games. Well, actually, first off, I wanted to show you what it was like in a CPU benchmark, such as Cinebench R20. Now, I did use the multi-core feature here, and we got quite a decent score, about 4,783 points in performance mode, and balanced mode was pretty similar, to be fair. Now, the temperatures, we're looking about max of 88 degrees on the CPU, pulling around about 54 watts. Now, interestingly, the performance mode did use an extra 2 watts max, but it did settle down to the 54 watts. In comparison, the 5900HS was 5100, and the i7 11800H was way back at 4188. Now, a longer running test using Handbrake, its CPU did get pretty toasty here. We're looking at 91 degrees, and this was using the max fan. So yeah, it got pretty hot. 47 watts on the performance mode, 41 watts it settled down at on the balance mode. And that reflects, of course, in the clock rates of 3,672 megahertz on the performance mode, and 3,522 on the balance mode. Now, the scores, or the time, I measured the time taken to actually render a video, convert a video. That took 970 seconds compared to 987 seconds on the balance mode. So it's a slight improvement, but in comparison, the desktop i9-11900K actually was slightly longer at 997 seconds. That was in the laptop, that was in the Clevo. So that shows it was a good performing CPU, this 5800H, although it did run a little bit hot. So looking at Far Cry New Dawn, I show performance mode and balance mode at the top. I tested 1080p there in yellow, and in blue I do 1440p, which is the native resolution, of course. So actually, I mean, the frame rates are reasonably okay. I wanted to throw in some comparisons. I got the 3070 125 watt there, the 1080p using a dedicated GPU. That got 105 FPS, so that shows what a difference that would be compared to the 85 watt here using Optimus. The 3060 130 watt using dedicated GPU. This was on the Legion 5 Pro. Got 95 FPS, so again a nice improvement there. Perhaps more comparable would be the Asus Zephyrus G15, because that had a 100 watt 3070, and that was about 83 FPS. So even though it was slightly more powerful 3070, it was about the same type of performance, because of Optimus, and perhaps also because of the RAM. Now, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, again, we've got 1080p at the top in yellow and 1440p in blue at the bottom. On the face of it, not too bad, but 97 FPS. First thing that struck me was, well, my 2080 Max-Q and my Omen 15 gets 95 FPS, and that's an older GPU now, isn't it? So that was about the same. The 130 watt 3060, again using dedicated GPU, was 112, whilst a 2070 Super using dedicated GPU, 114 FPS. So Optimus takes a huge chunk out of it, of course, as well as, of course, I think the wattage of the GPU as well. Finally, let's have a look at Assassin's Creed Valhalla using ultra-high settings. Comparing it here against the Zephyrus G15, again with the 100 watt max RTX 3070. So it's comparable. I actually got 64 FPS at 1080p compared to 60 FPS here on the Nitro 5. So that's a shame. All right, so what do I think of the Nitro 5? Well, I think, for $16.99, I think it's a little bit pricey, really, giving it performance. Although the 5800H, performs pretty well, doesn't it? It runs a bit hot. You need the max fan, or perhaps you can tinker it a little bit using the custom fan profile. But the 3070, it's a little bit handicapped. It's a low power, 85 watts. It could do a bit more power, I think. But I think also you can't ignore that there's no muck switch, or advanced Optimus type of thing. So Optimus does take a toll on it. Now, what I do like you got the 2.5-inch bay, so you can put some nice big storage in there. I didn't like the battery life. I was a bit disappointed. 4 hours was a bit pokey, when the 4600H model I have with the 1650 got like 10 hours. So that is a shame. Perhaps I could have done away with that 2.5-inch bay, put an M.2 in, and had a bigger battery. That might have been a good win situation. The webcam was so-so. The microphone picked up a lot of the background noise as well. The 3080 model, I think that's too expensive, $2,100, but I certainly think if you get a 3060 model, I think it'll be pretty decent. Anyway, stay tuned for my next video. That's going to be the HP Omen 15 Advantage. I think that's what it's called. It's got the 6600M in it. So that's going to do a first look unboxing video, and that'll be my next video. So make sure you're subscribed for that. Thanks for watching. Bye now.